And to balance out the Psyker week that we have been doing with the Armageddon box set, we of course are going to be doing the Space Marine Librarian in today's video. We gave you the Weirdboy during the week, so it seemed only fair that we kind of balance the two sides of the coin and give you both of those miniatures. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the Armageddon series, learning how to paint all the different miniatures inside the box. We've actually done quite a lot of them now. There's just like the sub boss for the orc. I can never remember what the sub war boss is called. And then there's the jump chaplain. There's some vanguard and aggressors left, I guess. On the orc side, there's Gretchen, if you care. So yeah, we are closing in on doing everything from the Armageddon box. Please let me know if there's any of the models I just mentioned that you would definitely like to see a video on, and I'll tackle that next week for you guys. Now, before I get into actually painting the model up, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone there who continues to support the channel by watching the videos, dropping comments if you have any questions, and making sure you're subscribed. Those things cost you nothing, but they're pretty big deal. So please, thank you very much for everyone who has gone out there and done it. And anyone who hasn't been doing it, come on. And anyone who goes the extra mile and supports over on Patreon, you guys keep the lights on, the cameras rolling. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Without you, I literally could not continue doing this. To say thank you, we give you extra videos, we get access to a podcast, access to a private Discord server, where we do a whole heap of events and stuff like that over there. And we do giveaways every single month. Last month we gave away an entire Armageddon box set. So this one needs to get boxed up and sent to Sweden over the weekend. And from now on, what we're going to be doing is a combat patrol or a spearhead box of your choice. So if you win, you get to decide, I'm actually excited to start this new army, or I'm excited to expand on this army. I would like one of those combat patrols, one of those spearheads, and we'll sort that out for you. Thank you so much for listening to my rant at the beginning of this video. Let's dive in and start painting up the model. Okay, so we have our new librarian from the Armageddon set. He's in a very dynamic pose. I like him like holding his staff out, firing some magic. And obviously like the ground textures following suit and shooting out in that direction. Well, there's a lot of energy and a lot of awesome direction to this model. So librarians usually though are something I try and avoid a little bit because I tend to not do very well when it comes to painting them. The Leviathan set version is the model I kind of like the least that I did out of that set. So let's see if I can fix that nowadays. So what we're going to start with is spraying the model black and then grey sear, as is tradition. And then I'm going to start with a Cantor blue base paint, and we're going to paint this across the entire armor. Now I do have the Heavy Metal article open again, but it's too much for me. There's too many crazy steps that I don't quite understand. And I'm going to try and minimize those a little bit and take some of them away. So after the Cantor blue, the article says mix Cantor blue with black and wash the model. That doesn't make any sense to me. And then after that, it says now deep shade the model with black, just pure black. And I'm like, okay, you want me to like glaze in black into the recesses? I guess. Those two steps sounded a bit odd. So I decided what I would do instead is I would just throw Nuln Oil across the armor, which will darken down that blue shaded armor, and then it'll have all the recesses be black, right? Shouldn't that do basically the same thing? I think so. After the Nuln Oil step on their article, they ask you to return to Cantor blue and basically do kind of like a glazy layer stage to kind of bring the color back up again, which, you know what I mean, anything that I may have not achieved via doing those other two steps that I put on with Nuln Oil, I think would be kind of taken away now with the layering of the Cantor blue again. So I think there's going to be literally zero difference between the end result because of this steps anyway. Obviously their edge highlighting might be better later on and they might get a better result, but the early steps of getting the armor done, I don't think so. If anyone disagrees and can explain it to me in the comments what I missed out on or what my model is missing or lacking from not doing those steps, please do let me know in the comments below. I am not someone who thinks they know everything. I like learning new things about painting. Even if I don't agree with them, even if it doesn't change my mind on what I would do, and like if I was painting another librarian, I'd probably do the same steps I'm doing here. But I like knowing. So like I said, we returned to Cantor blue, and as you can see, I'm tidying up those armor panels. Any of the flat sections that would kind of be the brightest, we're going to hit with Cantor blue, and we're going to leave all those nice deep recesses with the Nuln Oil and that dark shade, and I think that's the way to go. From then, it is time to start elevating the model up and the armor up, especially with the starting of the edge highlight, and that's where we're going to go to Altdorf Guard blue, which is a really nice kind of verging on blue, but bluey gray. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not Fenrisian gray, it's not Space Wolves gray, it's none of those, but it does definitely have a tint of gray to it. And we're going to use this to put a thick edge highlight across the model. It's something that a lot of people don't understand when they talk about edge highlighting or they think about edge highlighting, is not only do the edge highlights go against like across different lengths of the edges, if that makes sense. So if I'm doing, you know, a flat edge. You might want to put the edge highlight across like 50% of it, and then the next color will be about 30% of it or whatever. But the line that you actually put down goes from fat to thin. It's also a width thing when it comes to edge highlight, which is kind of a crazy thing to realize. When people talk about you can just edge highlight by putting your brush on its side and scraping it along the edge, that's not true. That does not give you the result that you need. You actually have to learn to get a steady hand and physically paint those lines in, which is tedious and it is annoying. But if you want to try and achieve the results that you've seen on box art and stuff, that's kind of what you have to learn to do. Okay, with the Altdorf Guard ready, we have now moved on with Altdorf Guard and Fenrisian Grey. We're going to mix those together about 50-50, which will give us our next kind of mid highlight. And as you can see, as I'm applying this, it's on a much smaller surface. We're just going for kind of edges and corners, and we're coming out from those corners and edges a fair amount, but we're not going for total coverage, not nearly as much as we did with the Altdorf Guard. And also trying to remember where the light will hit on the model, which will obviously dictate where those edge highlights will go. But if you don't want to worry too much about light sources and all that stuff, if you can't kind of keep that steady in your mind, it's a safe bet to just go for every corner and just pull it out a little bit from the corner. No, don't go too much more kind of complicated than that. And you will achieve a fairly decent result that sells as a nice edge highlighted model. Now, this edge highlight is very interesting because obviously it was just Altdorf Guard. Then we mixed Altdorf Guard with Fenrisian Grey. Then we're going to mix that mix again, but now we're going to add white into it to brighten it up one more time. And this is applied again in the same spots, but less. So when we hit the corners, we're not really pulling them out that much. It's going to be just kind of the corners and then a tiny bit out. And that will definitely sell the kind of last point of reflection from the edge highlight across this entire armor. And it's going to look really nice. So that's going to finish off the Librarian Armour. And then the kind of steps that I'm going to go through after this step is then kind of like a personal preference, as goes, this is going into my Imperial Fist second company. Therefore, there's going to be a lot of red in it. So I'm going to do red kind of tabard and red cloak to help him blend in with those. Traditionally, librarians have like either cream robes, or the one in the Armageddon box actually has a black robe. So if you have a specific thing, like if you're going for salamanders or something now, perhaps the cape and the loincloth is something where you want to tie in that nice green color to help it kind of blend in and look more fitting for your army. That's up to you. At this point as well, you may notice that I haven't painted the shoulder trim, because in my head, I thought the shoulder trim was going to be gold or red to match my army. It's only when I kind of pulled up the Armageddon picture of the librarian later on that I realized that it's supposed to be the same blue as the rest of the armor. His shoulder trim doesn't change at all depending on who he's fighting for. So that was a bit disappointing. It means I had to go back to Cantor Blue, block in those colors, and then shade, and then edge highlight, and try. So you will just notice them at one point in the video just completely transcend and become the same color as the armor. So just ignore that a little bit. So as you can see, I am throwing the rest of the base coats on. I have thrown Black Templar contrast across his staff and some cable work. We have a nice Uriel yellow that we're applying to, and in yellow contrast to his power cables. Librarians are known to have yellow power cables. I guess that's like pulsing energy. We have Blood Angel's red that we threw across, like I said, his cape and his tabard. Cygor brown for his leather gloves. I hate Space Marines and leather gloves. They would always have power armored gauntlets in my head. I don't know. Does he have power armor gauntlets under his gloves? I presume so. If so, why has he got the gloves on? I much prefer painting the armored gauntlets. So I don't know what that decision is all about, but it annoys me every time I have to paint them. It's why I hated old Khorne berserkers wearing their oven mitts. Skeleton Horde was then used for all the bones. So obviously he's got this awesome big staff tipped with a skull. And then I decided to use this for the cloth parts or the paper parts of all of the purity seals across the model as well, which was quite a few. So make sure you go and find those and block them in. We grabbed a nice dark silver color. In this case, it was Lead Belcher, and painted up any of the sections that needed to be silver. So the kind of power generation or the little engine thing for his psychic staff got done with that. And then Retribute Armor went in for the rest of the metallics. Obviously, the staff has got quite a lot of kind of gilding and gold wrapped around it. I much prefer this detail in gold as opposed to the old kind of rainbow colors they used to put up the staff, which I just always seemed kind of infuriating as to how to paint it. So this is much simpler, and this is the way they did theirs. So I'm going to copy along happily. Oh, look, you'll notice the shoulder pads are now fixed. Shh, don't worry about that. There is a bunch of gold. Like I said, the staff, the tip of the staff, he's got the kind of back banner bit that comes out of his power pack. And then there's other symbols on his shoulder pads and stuff that we need to get all that done in gold. Okay, and with all those details blocked in, it's time to null and oil them all. So we're going to shade down all those different sections, except we're going to be super careful not to hit the blue armor that we have technically finished now. So this is just going to be for cape, gold, yellow, any of the other sections except for the blue. We're going to do a nice solid coat of null and oil on that, which will add a lot of depth to all those sections, and then obviously give us a place to build up those tones and add the highlights that we want. While we are in the process of waiting for that shade to dry, I did throw some Firelands from AK Interactive texture paste on his base. And then when that was like semi-dry, I threw some orange contrast over the rocks and then over that texture paste as well. It's how I start my kind of Martian-y bases that I do for my Space Marines. And with that dry, it's now time to work up that beautiful red cape. So we go from Mephiston, Evil Sunz, Wall Rider, Towlight Ochre. Those are the 4 paints that we need. Considering that we've already put a red contrast and a black wash, this may seem complicated, but I'm going to focus on just the tabard bit here to try and show you a little bit more in depth of how I do this process. So obviously, there's lots of natural folds in the cape. It is swooshing a little bit to like stage left. And you can see all those nice bits. So you're just aiming for those higher, kind of flatter sections to hit with the layer paint. So this is the Mephiston red going on now. And then we're leaving those nice, deep crevices and folds alone. We're not going to try and paint over them at all. They've already got the red contrast and the shade, so they are perfect the way they are. And this highlight that you're putting on, if you keep in mind the idea that you're going to want to put on 3 other colors on top of this, that should then tell your brain to leave yourself enough space to then highlight on top of this. If you make those lines too thin, how the hell are you going to come in with a brighter color and a brighter color and a brighter color and still have any of the previous color left behind? Does that make sense? So as you can see, when I'm coming in here with the Wild Rider red, I'm doing exactly the same parts as I did previously in exactly the same way. It's just less. We're leaving some Mephiston red down in the kind of deepest sections and going higher with the Evil Sunz Scarlet. And this is giving us a really nice crimson looking tabard. So then we go with the Wild Rider. As you can see, it was almost an edge highlight. We're just aiming for those very kind of tippity top parts and very small streaks down the middle, leaving behind those previous colors. And then we jump up to that crazy final highlight, which is that Towlight Ochre, which still barely makes sense to me, but it reads as a beautiful highlight for red. So I will not argue with the people that did that. You can see that I'm just going for the tips and very small amounts on the other parts. And this is going to sell that as being just a horribly contrasted and washed cape to being fairly detailed and looking awesome. It looks great next to that blue armor. It looks incredibly detailed and it wasn't that difficult to do. Obviously, you're going to need practice if you're going to have an army with 100 capes on it. You know, the first cape you do is probably going to be pretty terrible. The 50th cape you do is going to look amazing. And the 100th cape is going to be godlike. So practice is always going to make perfect. Liberator gold was then brought in to highlight all of the gold sections on the miniature. So obviously all the gilding up and down his staff. His chest emblem is surrounded by gold ahead of the staff. Back banner symbol thing. So just go around and nice highlight color on those. Like I said, the bits that are higher up highlight them kind of more. That's where the light is reflecting from. And underneath the staff, you don't really have to care too much about that. No one's going to see it. And that's where the light is going to be the least anyway. There's a couple of details that I will, of course, skip, or this video will be an hour long. Like, I'm not going to show you how I paint the face. I've showed you a million times. You can always check a million of my other videos to learn how to paint faces. With the bone work here, I started with Morghast bone. I did actually go up into Ushabti bone and Screaming Skull to really bring all of those tones up, but I'm only going to show you the Morghast bone. As you can see, I'm highlighting up all those kind of skeleton details from the skulls, obviously the horns coming down the back, and all the purity seals that exist across the model. We're going to hit with those. Things like we hit the book and all the wax seal parts of the purity seals with Volupus pink in the early stages of the video, and we just didn't show it. It would have added too much time. So then we go in with like Screamer Pink now, or Pink Horror now, to highlight those sections. As you can see, it's just a little bit on the cover of the book and going around those wax sections of the purity seals. A really nice detail, and it just pops. So no detail is left behind, even if they aren't primarily that focused on in the videos. After that, we added some nilic oxide, which I really like for adding in psychic energy. You know that I did it with the Orc War Weirdboy that I did during the week. If you haven't seen that, I'll leave a link now for the video. Basically, this week I focused on the Librarian / Weirdboy from the Armageddon box, the Psychers. So they're kind of supposed to be watched in a pair, if you will. Let's go check that out if you haven't seen it. But I like adding this around the kind of head of the staff, built into the energy. I added a little bit into his eyes. Then I added some black pigment powder on the base, give it that worn, torn Armageddon look. And with that, we have our finished Armageddon Librarian ready to rock and roll. The last thing I need to do is get him ready to be transported into battle. And for this, I always grab my WarMag cases and my WarMag magnets. All I need to do is, after the model is finished, I grab one of the magnets, which all you need to do is peel off the back as you do like this, and then stick it to the bottom of the base. And that's it. The model is ready to be put into its WarMag case and transported safely. With everything having like washi designs and staffs and banners, I like keeping things safe and sound, not having anything rub against each other, anything bending or breaking in foam or anything like that. I love it to bits. If you want to check out WarMag, I'll leave some links down in the description below. You can check them out for yourself, but they're primo. Few last images of my Librarian. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this and you're looking forward to the last few Armageddon videos next week on the channel. And I hope your box is coming along great.